Welcome to our inaugural podcast from the Pavilion. I'm Kartik Krishnaiyer.
And I'm Ed Boreth.
So, Ed, this is our maiden voyage with this journey we're about to take through the world of cricket. For background, let's hear your background in cricket. What ties you to the sport, and then we're going to talk about why the sport is so cool, why it's more than a sport, why not it's not just strictly a game or a match or however you put it. But Ed, yeah, your background in cricket.
My background in cricket, boy, that I'm not sure a lot of people know my full background in cricket. Yeah, I'm American, first of all, which makes it pretty strange. I'm not I'm not from the Caribbean. A lot of people think I'm from Australia, I'm from England, I'm from South Africa. I'm not. I was born in America. Most of my family's been here for a few generations. So it's, I'm American, one of the few American cricket players out there. Um, my background in it's actually pretty interesting. A lot of people know I started off. I had some friends from Trinidad. They needed a sponsor. I knew a little bit about the game, so I agreed to sponsor it. But really, and I don't even know if you know this, my real background in cricket goes back to the movie Spinal Tap, back when I was in high school. So
The
that was
great
my
Rob
introduction
Reiner,
to
who just
cricket.
passed away.
Yeah. Rob Reiner just passed away. They just had Spinal Tap 2 come out recently. But and I haven't seen that one yet. But if you're of my age, you might remember the original Spinal Tap. And if you remember their manager, Sir Dennis Eaton Hogg, God, I'm going to try to remember. I believe it was Tony Hendren. I hope I'm getting his name right. That played him. We could look that up later and maybe tape over it. But anyway, he plays her manager, and Rob Reiner makes a comment about like this totem, this affectation that he has. It's a cricket bat, and I kind of like things that are a little offbeat. And I went, "Oh, that's kind of interesting. What the heck is that?" And then they show him like smashing things up with it, and I'm like, "Oh, that's kind of interesting." Oh, there's a sport that comes with that. I didn't know that. Um, but 2 years later, I always had this like little what's this cricket thing. And believe me, if you went to the library back then, we didn't have the internet in the 80s, right? So you go to the library back then, and there's not a cricket book anywhere in America, I don't think, back at that time. Maybe a couple somewhere, but certainly not a lot. And so I really, didn't know much about it. Cut to many years later, it was on my honeymoon in Ireland. It's when the Cricket World Cup was in Ireland and England. I'm seeing every day on there cricket being played and trying to understand the scores if you're just looking at it like England wins by 16 runs. That makes sense to me as an American. But then the next day you see Ireland loses by 6 wickets, and you're like, what? I don't get it. Like, I still don't get the game. Anyway, I had a friend, a coworker I used to work with who was from Jamaica. He played the game, tried to explain it to me, didn't get it. Finally, friends of mine, some people I knew from Trinidad, asked me to sponsor the cricket team. I said, I'm in, but I want to play. You got to teach me this game. That's how I got into it. Got completely addicted. Became a huge fan of the sport. I love it. It's great. To me, the big thing was always, unlike baseball, which I'm not a huge fan of, hey, if I'm out, I'm out. I'll be back in a couple innings. Here, you're out, you're out. And not only that, but you're always playing offense and defense. You can't just go, I don't like that pitch or I don't like that ball. I'll just let it go by. You're always connected to it, and things can happen really fast. You can have a great stand in batting, or you can get a duck real fast on your first pitch, and then you're just going to spend a lot of time in the field. So, to me, cricket, there's so much more at stake in it. And if we look at Test cricket, to me, the important thing is there's so much strategy, and it's not just where to place people, but do we declare? Do we make the other team play through? To have a game where you can end up 500 to, I don't know, 368, and it's still a draw because it lasted 5 days and nobody won. It really shows that you have to think a lot about the game. And so it really combines lots of great elements of physical prowess, being able to hit, being able to field, being able to chase down the balls. Oh, and by the way, for those people that don't know, I'm sure it's mostly cricket fans, they don't wear gloves. So, it's kind of a no gloves. They're just out there. It's a hard ball. If anyone's ever tried to catch a hard cricket ball on a line drive, it could be a pretty stinging experience and also a pretty dangerous one. And today, at least, they tend to wear helmets while batting and more pads, so they keep safe. But yeah, that's kind of it, man. I think it's a wonderful game. Strange way to get there from Spinal Tap to cricket radio show I had a while ago to now doing this. So very excited.
Yeah, your journey, not that different, I guess, or not that stranger than mine. So my journey is obviously, my name indicates it. I'm of Indian descent. My parents were not huge cricket fans. Much more football fans, football, soccer, right? That's why I think most of you who are listening know me from the world of football or world of soccer, as we call it here in the States, and it's called in Canada and Australia. Select few countries are called soccer. But um, my interest in cricket sort of emanated from I have a real kind of almost an academic interest in college football. Going back to my college years at the University of Florida, I grew up a University of Miami fan in South Florida. We were winning everything then. Pity we should be we should have won the national championship this year. We being Miami, so close, obviously, in that game against Indiana. But I have an academic interest in college football in that in college, I developed this interest at UF because I was Southern politics was one of my focuses as a political science slash journalist major, and as someone who was active in the political scene at the university, and then worked in political work after. Culturally, college football explains the South, and I got into this academic side, how college football and college football history explains the South, how college football history and the Big Ten kind of explain the Midwest. And eventually, as I traveled to India more, I traveled to India more as an adult than I did as a child, even because it was so expensive to travel in those days, and I was in school. So we'd go visit my dad's parents and my mother's parents once every 3 or 4 years. Once I became an adult and they're getting older and their affairs to manage there, I'm going to India at least once a year. And I realized, um, first of all, cricket, there were some obvious similarities with football. I know they're totally different sports, but obvious similarities kind of in the culture. And they're both British sports, right? A lot of British terminology. But then I realized I could not understand India as a country. The same argument I made about the South, Southern United States, and you can't understand the Southern US culturally if you don't understand college football. Now, some people would argue you need to understand country music, which I don't know. I will readily admit that to understand the Southern US, but I've made the argument for 30 plus years now about college football. And I realized in the 2000s, right before the launch of the IPL, and right when you were doing your radio show, Ed, and you were covering the 2007 World Cup, I could not understand India or modern India without understanding cricket. And then I realized I couldn't actually understand India's relationship with uh, its former colonizer, the United Kingdom, England specifically, the English part of the United Kingdom, without understanding cricket and without being steeped in cricket history. And it just went from there. So let's talk about the culture of cricket a bit, because, as I said, my parents, much bigger soccer fans, football fans growing up. A part of it is where my father grew up. He grew up in Kerala, which is one of maybe two places in the country where football was the number one sport, and cricket was number two. And actually, in some parts of India in those days when my father grew up, field hockey was big, but most of the country it was cricket, and now I think the entire country it's cricket. Uh, but his memories, and my mother, more specifically, my mother's memories. My father passed away a few years ago. My mother's still with us, so I've actually spoken to my mother recently about this. Her memories of cricket are not about who the great batsmen or great bowlers were. It is about, Ed, and this is something I know you can comment on in great detail. It was about the picnic baskets, the tea, the sitting on the lawn, the kind of communal aspect of cricket. It was about the cultural aspect of kind of the merging of British high society, and then this emerging this independent India, and if you want to call it the aristocracy, like the business culture that had been very much influenced by the British in India. And those were the sorts of people you saw at the cricket match. You would dress up for the cricket match. You would wear your best dress. Her father and mother would wear their best clothes. They would have a picnic basket. They would have they would have a full pot of tea, and this was what cricket was about in Chennai, Madras was known then. In for my mother in the 1950s and 1960s, and to me that's fascinating because that is not the way. Uh, as much as you can, people would argue, oh well, college football, because I've just given this dissertation about my academic interest in college football. Oh, it's just a bunch of people getting drunk and going to games. Yeah, there's some truth to that, but that is not actually the most tangible memory you hear from people who talk about the sport. But cricket, it was something completely different. The match itself was it was a sideshow in many ways.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you, and particularly when it comes to college football. I went to Tulane, not a big powerhouse football school back in the 80s. Today, they seem to be doing a lot better, but still, back then, it wasn't. Yet, everyone still wanted to go out. They wanted to tailgate. They wanted to show up. It was an event to go to. And I think very much, particularly in the South, football, and you're the SEC football expert, but football in the South is a little bit different because of the warmer weather that you get through the season, that you can stay outside, tailgate, enjoy the
That is
weather
such a great
before a game
point.
for a good or
That
3, 4 hours.
and that is such a money point. So continue with that.
Yeah, if you're up north and there's a snowstorm and you're playing in Syracuse, do you really want to stand outside in 20 degrees and snow grilling? I know they do it, but I'm just thinking it's not real conducive to it. Yet, on the other hand, if it's 50 degrees in the fall and you're in Alabama, Georgia, Florida, yeah, that's great weather to hang out, spend time with your friends, your family, have some food, maybe have a couple drinks before going into the stadium. And it's certainly about that time that you get to spend together. In fact, let's go back. We talk about really cricket comes from the British colonies. That's part of the way football is played all over the world. British Empire seemed to conquer everywhere. Football's easy. Football, you just go, you have one ball, you could throw down some markers for goals, and you're ready to go. Cricket takes a little bit more. One need to have a bat. I know a lot of people, particularly my friends have told me from the Caribbean, that you go ahead, you have the garbage can as the background, that's your wicket. And if you hit that, you're out. But it still takes a little bit more to go play. Obviously, you could play a sandlot version of it. But I think that a lot of it was it picked up in certain countries because those were places where the British colonizers had time to really hang out and time to kill, and they needed to kill some time. And what better way to do it than playing a game that takes 5 days?
Yeah, and I think the evolution of cricket is very different than the evolution of football because with football, what you had is a lot of working class Brits who worked on ships, who worked were kind of in the merchant class, who spread the game through their trade network. So that's why you have football slash soccer being such a prominent sport in places like Argentina and Uruguay and Italy. Italy, it came because of the British merchants, British traders. A, cricket, on the other hand, to your point, Ed, was the colonial administrators' game. Was the game of the British Empire. So that's why it caught on in the places the British directly administered, like India, like Australia, like South Africa, like New Zealand. Those are the places the game really caught on. Now, um, I've written a piece for Beyond the Boundary about how at one time it was the biggest sport in the United States prior to our Civil War, and how the first international. It's funny because I got sort of sensitive one year during the Ashes when the British commentator was saying, "Well, this is the oldest rivalry, Australia and England." Well, actually, the oldest rivalry in international cricket is the U.S. versus Canada. The game was
Is
organized
that?
first properly in North America, even though obviously it had been played in England for years, and you had things like the cricket. the cricket clubs in the south of England that grew. Interestingly enough, the best book I've read about the history of cricket is actually by the former British Prime Minister John Major, who wrote a great book about cricket's origins in the 60s, in the 1600s and 1700s, and then talked about its origins, and that's specific to England, and then not to the other constituent parts of the United Kingdom, or what became the United Kingdom after 1800. This is specific to England, and then wrote a couple chapters in that book about why it became such an important game, particularly in India, the West Indies, and Australia, and about colonial administrators spreading the game. But they had not organized the game quite in the way that the U.S. and Canada did initially, which is pretty shocking and fascinating. Uh, but
Right.
take us a little more inside this kind of cultural side of cricket, because now it's become almost more of a kind of a cultural celebration. You have specific experience with the West Indies, so take us through that, and how the game is viewed in the Caribbean.
Well, before we get to that, I just want to make one comment. You talked about how cricket was more like the British administrators, and football, soccer, what was more from tradesmen. And here's a little side note. I once learned, and I just want to put this out to everyone. AC Milan, right? Big, famous football club, was initially founded as a football and cricket club by an English guy. So, there was overlap there. And it, there's some places where soccer took off, some places where cricket took off, but is some overlap between the two. And it's kind of interesting because if you go back, there's actually cricket sort of weaves itself in a lot of strange places. Now, what's interesting is, we talk about, okay, it's the sport of the British government, let's call it, that's there. It's the Foreign Office. They're there. They have time to kill. They're in these places, generally fairly warm places where they could go out and play. And they go ahead and they do this, and they have nothing to do. So they go and play a game that takes 5 days to play and might end in a tie at the end of it. Over the years, I think that one of the big things that really grew in a lot of these places was that they were colonies, and there was almost a desire to beat the British at their own game. When I talk with some people that I know back from the Caribbean, talking about the Windies in the 70s, when they were able to beat England, it was huge. And the same of India, Pakistan. There's a really good Bollywood movie, at least it's long. I think it's pretty good, called Lagan, about India, and they're beating the colonials, the colonists, the British in cricket, their own game. And there was a sense of pride about it. Today, I think, like most sports, unfortunately, it's come down to a lot more about money. It's about marketing. I find it interesting. T20s become very big because it's fast and furious. It's high scoring. It only takes 2 hours to play. And people go, well, people don't have time. They're not going to go watch a 5 day match, or they're not even going to watch a 1 day anymore. I think that's kind of crazy. If we look at the Super Bowl, we have the Super Bowl coming up soon. If we look at the Super Bowl, we're going to get nothing but talk about the Super Bowl for 2 weeks. They're going to start Super Bowl coverage 4 hours before the game, or if not more than that. Probably knowing all the different channels we have, somebody's going to have something from that morning going all day about the Super Bowl. And there's going to be people that are watching it almost all day. And that's leading up to a 4 hour game that's probably going to take 4.5 hours with the extended halftime and everything else that the Super Bowl has. So I don't think it's about trying to make it fast and furious. I think it's about trying to keep it interesting and trying to get it out to the people, because it's been kind of gate kept, I think. A lot of people are like, okay, it's cricket. Let me explain cricket to you. And they go and they explain cricket in the British tea towel sense that comes off very confusing. You're in till you're out till you're in. Like I said, how do I know who's winning? Yeah, if you say who's winning in a cricket match, right? There's no way to know because it's all one side, then all the other. And so, because it's kind of been gate kept in a way from people, I think that it's sort of lost its audience, and they've tried to build it up with the music, the festival, and you know what? It works great in some places. It's very Caribbean to go, have a great time. But at the end of the day, it's still about going, having a nice beer, having some food at the game, and enjoying it. And really, I think all sports, but cricket for some reason really sort of lends itself to that kind of atmosphere. And people, as you know, for as serious as you are, you're always going to clap the 50, even if it's someone from the other team. You're going to clap 100 if there's a good play. Everyone's going to enjoy it. We don't have the rivalry in the same way that we do in other sports,
Get
and
into
certainly
that a
not
little bit,
soccer,
Ed.
football.
That's a really interesting aspect of cricket that I think a lot of American sports fans in particular may not understand, which is the clapping for accomplishments on the opposing team.
Yeah, I think Americans are kind of coming around to this a little bit. If nowadays when you see a player that used to play in your team, if they're on the opposing team coming back, they'll usually announce it and get a little bit of a round of applause, which I think is very nice. But boy, if we go back into where sports used to be in America, we could talk about like 70s Oakland Raiders, some of the fan base there, some of the fan base for the Philadelphia Eagles. I've heard stories what it was like playing in Veteran Stadium back in the day for some former players. It was not a pleasant experience. It was a really heated rivalry, kind of like we see in soccer in a lot of places. And you're familiar with the gang violence that erupted in England and all the things that England did around that. It still exists in a number of other countries around the world, and the problems that they have with football. So, there's something that was always kind of kept genteel about cricket and enjoyable. I found it very notable. I was in England a number of years ago and got to go see a game at Lord's. And it was kind of interesting because when we were going there, you can one, rent a picnic basket if you're going, but two, you can bring in your own. So I don't know other sports where they're like, yeah, go bring your own food and drink in. They did limit the drink to like one bottle of wine or two beers. But compare that to soccer in England, where I think it's still the case today, you can't even buy a beer. You're not allowed to drink in the stadium unless maybe in the club sections, I think, today. So it's a very different attitude towards it. I mean, could you imagine today if they said, hey, come out to a football game or baseball game and bring your own food and drink? I mean, that's like
But
unheard of,
the
especially when we look at
commercialization
the
of the game
prices that
wouldn't
we
allow
pay.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look at the prices that we pay at the stadium. We all complain, it's $8 for a bottle of water that we could get at Costco for a quarter. It's just so there is something nice about it. I think that part of it is keeping that tradition, that pastoral picnic, come out and enjoy the day. And I think that there's a little bit of both today from what I've seen in cricket and what I've been involved in more recently, where there is like the grandstand, the party, the DJ, getting everyone going. And then there's also usually like a pavilion that's catered that you're going to sit a little bit more upscale. And they're just kind of two experiences, but everyone's out there enjoying the same game. And really at the end of the day, to me, it's always about going out, eating, drinking, having a good time with your friends. Very much same as a lot of American sports. Now the Super Bowl, I bring up Super Bowl because it's coming up. I'm sure the food section is going to be, here's all the food you need for your Super Bowl party. Here's Super Bowl cocktails. Here's Super Bowl craft beer. Yeah. Really, at the end of the day, it's all about hanging out with your friends, eating, drinking, and having a good time. And I know for me, 2 hours is great, but if you can stretch that out a little bit into like, I mean, a 1 day event, great. Or even if you just go to like 1 day of a 5 day event, if you can get away with 5 days watching cricket, man, go for it. So
Yeah,
yeah, I think that we
absolutely.
need to see it what it is. It's really about getting out and enjoying.
Yep, absolutely. Agreed. So that's a great overview of the journey we're going to take on this show. Let's conclude with some news. The T20, the ICC T20 Men's World Cup is starting a week from today as we record this on a Saturday, Saturday, February 7th. The first fixture is between India and the United States at the in Mumbai. There has been some controversy about this competition, which is being co-hosted by India and Sri Lanka. And the reason Sri Lanka is a co-host is for political reasons, which we're about to get into. Bangladesh has withdrawn from the tournament, alleging that their athletes cannot be kept safe, their cricketers cannot be kept safe in India. The ICC has rejected this. They wanted their fixtures moved to Sri Lanka. The ICC rejected this. They said they could find no credible threats to the Bangladesh cricketers or to Bangladeshis in general in India. And in fact, Bangladesh has sent their shooting team, skeet shooting or whatever, to India just this week with no controversy and to compete. So, whatever the case there, Bangladesh withdrawn. Scotland has replaced them in Group C, which is a group where they will compete with Nepal, England, the West Indies, and Italy. Italy making their first appearance in this competition. Italy can qualify for cricket World Cups, but has a hard time qualifying for football World Cups. Go figure.
Hey, I
So
told you AC Milan was also a cricket club, so maybe they're
yeah,
starting to
maybe
find
it's
their footing
maybe
again.
it's caught on in latter days. AC Milan, which of course is called AC Milan for a reason because it was founded by Englishmen, as you mentioned, English tradesmen. It's not called Atletico Club Milano. It's AC, Athletic Club Milan. So, although interestingly enough, Mussolini made them change their name for a period of time, but then after he was deposed and the war was over, they reverted to their classic name. Pakistan is participating as of now in the T20 World Cup, but Ed, a little disturbing news that they canceled their kit announcement on Saturday, a week before the tournament. Their fixtures are all in Sri Lanka for, again, security reasons. Pakistan has not played a match in India since 2008. India has not played a match in Pakistan in recent years. Political tensions, religious tensions between those two countries. India, in the Champions Trophy, which was hosted by Pakistan in 2025, played all their fixtures in Dubai. That arrangement was made, the arrangement for Pakistan in this World Cup. And in the previous World Cups that have been hosted by India, there has been the arrangement that they would play their matches in Sri Lanka. Bangladesh wanted that same arrangement. Bangladesh's political tensions with India, by the way, have to do with a single individual, former Bangladeshi premier, who has been given exile in India. And the current Bangladeshi government wants her turned over for trial. India is refusing to turn her over for a trial because it'll be a sham show trial, quite frankly, and she'll be executed. She's safely in exile in India. So the tension between India and Bangladesh is a little different than the tension between India and Pakistan, although the religious thing kind of is picking up there. But Ed, the politicization of these competitions, cricket has been really adversely affected by this the last few years. We're seeing football beginning to be adversely affected by it. I was listening to Rory Stewart and former Tory PM, MP minister in David Cameron's government, who was advocating a full-on fan boycott of the World Cup, at least the World Cup, not the cricket World Cup, the football World Cup, at least the U.S. portion of the World Cup because of Donald Trump and ICE. I was listening to Rory and his podcast, The Rest is Politics, earlier in the week. And so politics are here to stay in these sports, unfortunately.
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up. Initially, we look at the Olympics. The Olympics, very much it's about camaraderie, coming together, sportsmen. Let's keep politics out of it. And generally, we have little bit of issue with Russia, and they created the CIS and Russian Federation for certain athletes because of problems with Russia. We had boycotts involving Russia and the United States back in the 80s, but generally we've kept it out. Cricket's actually the opposite. Cricket's always had politics involved from the very beginning because, as we discussed, is mostly from the British Foreign Office. And a lot of the teams that played against them, we talk about the countries in the nine, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa. A lot of these places were under British rule, and it was to fight against them. So to me, I always think cricket and politics go hand in hand because that's the way it was. The other sports, we start to find it a little bit strange, and certainly we'd like to keep politics out for the athletes, but unfortunately it does tend to come into play. But cricket, I think it's always been mixed together there just because of how it came about.
Agreed.
All right. Well, I think that that's probably a good place to end and leave
Yeah,
our
yeah,
listeners hanging a little bit as I see the clock tick to the 30-minute mark.
yep,
We
yeah.
went
So
about
let's
10 minutes longer than we thought we were going to do today. So,
Yeah, so exactly. So let's leave off there. Next week we're going to have the matches in the T20 to talk about. We might do an episode before then to try and set up the tournament. And again, we're gonna be covering the tournament not just from results and balls and bats perspective. I mean, I, I I think, quite frankly, there are other people who cover that as well. But we're going to be covering the cultural aspect of it, kind of maybe also talking about why this is a sport that really can hook Americans and why it kind of fits the American psyche here in the 2020s. So for Ed Boreth, I'm Kartik Krishnaiyer. We will talk to you again real soon.